Thank you for having me, and good morning. Happy Friday. So a couple of things. I got to be on my best behavior because I'm being filmed, so I will work on that. It is a pleasure when you get to work with a department that is supportive of some things that you recommend and things that you talk to them about, current issues that we face, not only as a university but nationally. Just to give you an idea of this presentation, we used to teach a generic workplace violence class, and I had the ability and the privilege to teach for the state, and I would teach all over the state of Nevada this workplace violence class, but it was 4 hours long. And let me tell you, it was brutal to teach, but it was even more brutal to watch the audience trying to keep their eyes open and their eyes from rolling in the back of their head. And over time, and I'm talking this has been over a 15-year period, over time we started looking at this workplace violence presentation we were teaching, and we're like, we're missing the mark here. This is not working. And so we sat down and looked at our issues that we're seeing nationally, locally, and all kinds of things, and said we need to really change the dynamics of this presentation. And I kind of look at it as we need to teach our folks to be offensive, not defensive. We need to teach them how to react, and we need to teach them what they need to know that is directly related to the problems that we're seeing. We talk about violence in the workplace, and we'll give you maybe a slide on workplace violence so we understand what workplace violence is. But the main goal here is to get you to react to any threat in the workplace, because workplace violence is a threat. And we'll talk about some of that stuff. Also, the ultimate goal is, how many of you have seen your building emergency plans or your building evacuation plans? That's what I thought. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. No oops here. The problem is they're multi-pages. Okay, they're quite extensive. That doesn't work. Okay, we need to keep it simple, and that's kind of what I'm here to get you to prepare, is something very simple. If it doesn't fit on a 3x5 card, it's not going to work. Okay, it's just some key things that you'll have on a 3x5 card where you're all on the same page and you all are reacting the same to certain things. That's what's going to be the ultimate goal here, and that's what's going to, God forbid, in the event that you have to trigger that mechanism, you all are reacting quick enough to hopefully save lives and save something from getting serious. So let's just get this stuff out of the way real quick on the workplace violence definitions. Again, workplace violence is any physical assault, threatening behavior, or verbal abuse occurring in a work setting. Here's where I don't want you to get fixated on workplace violence being in the workplace, because your work may take you outside of your normal workplace. CASAT, I'm assuming you don't do all your business here on campus. You may do business elsewhere. So you also have to understand that wherever you go for your workplace, or it might even be in your car, that's considered your workplace if you're working. Okay, so understand that key piece. Here's what we see, and I don't really need to read all these, but this is the type of threats, and why we call this thing active threats, that we see not only in the workplace but across the nation, are what is happening. I need to remind you, folks, this stuff doesn't just happen in the workplace. How many of you go to restaurants to eat? How many of you go to malls to shop? Now, I can pull up all the recent incidents across our country and show you that they happen in malls, they happen in restaurants, okay, they happen at grocery stores. They may happen at a business that you're doing business at. You just might be there at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and all of that stuff just falls into a a problem, and you need to be able to react. Whether you're just a customer, whether you're sitting in a restaurant, those types of things. Who's committing these? Well, employees are committing these acts. Why it's workplace. Could be a former employee. Okay. Relatives. Unfortunately, relatives play huge roles in workplace violence. Students. Okay. Patients. Okay, because we have medical facilities, we have medical offices. I don't know how you consider your clients, if they're clients, patients, whatever, but don't rule out those. Contractors. Now, in addition to a contractor on campus that is actually pounding nails and building things, we also have independent contractors that we do business with. Okay, they fall into that realm, as well as our customer base or vendors. Okay, we do have a lot of vendors that come onto campus too. So it's a pretty broad spectrum. I usually like to say this is anyone and everyone, but I don't want people to say, well, he's telling me that I'm going to commit workplace violence. That's not what I'm saying, but it's our population. Okay. Now, one of the things that we get to do, unfortunately, is when we have an incident, whether it's local or whether it's happening across the country, we get afterwards, we get detailed reports and studies of that specific event. The FBI and the Bureau of Justice do a great job of looking at the incident and putting a report together, and it goes out to law enforcement. We do spend a great deal of time reviewing and monitoring and reading these reports to get a better understanding of the things that happen. For example, Virginia Tech, last year we were able to bring out law enforcement that responded to Virginia Tech, as well as victims and witnesses that were involved in Virginia Tech. It was an 8-hour day we got to spend with them. So the first 4 hours we got an overview of the incident at Virginia Tech, and then the second half of the day we got to, in a panel setting, interrogate them basically and ask them the questions that we've been dying to ask. And it was really informational for us, and a lot of what we're talking about had come from those discussions. Those are the things that we get to do.
Can you remind everyone what Virginia Tech was?
So Virginia Tech had a student, there was, earlier in the morning at Virginia Tech, there was a homicide that involved some students in a dorm. That was the original call. The officers responded and they began investigating a homicide. This was early in the morning hours. So then about 9:30 in the morning, later that morning, a student showed up on campus, went to a specific hall, a building where there's classrooms at, chained the doors, and went in and opened fire. Most of you know the outcome of that. I think 32 deaths from that case. And they were both related. Virginia Tech got a lot of backlash on their notifications to the campus about a potential threat. It was a nightmare, and I got sympathy for both sides. But it was telling for us to be able to learn what it is we need to communicate to our community. So we get to look at this and we see a lot of the same indicators in these perpetrators that commit these crimes. And it's great because it gives us a lot of key indicators. One of the things that we talked about in key indicators was, and I don't want to say this to scare you, maybe you'll relate to me, maybe you won't, but we've got, I don't know, maybe 100 students on this campus that would have key indicators. Okay? Well, it's good to know because we can monitor them. We can do our best to keep tabs on them, make sure they're given the resources they need, whether it's counseling resources, substance abuse resources, academic resources, financial resources, all those types of things, and keep tabs on them. But do you think that we're going to come to a point where we can paint the picture of the person we're looking for with all of this information to get that profile? No. We're just not there, and I don't know that we'll ever get there. But we can focus on the key indicators, and that's huge. And we'll tie that up at the end is what it is the key indicators should trigger in our community. Oop. So let's back up. Before we get started in what it is we want to accomplish in this class is to develop a survival mindset. One of the things that we talked about during the workplace violence training was we have to get our community to think in a survival mode. And I relate it to the training that I've gone through in my 21 years, okay, back to when I went through the police academy. They always mentally conditioned us to train for certain things, okay? We have to mull things over in our head all the time. You know, what if this happens? What am I going to do? How am I going to react? To give you an example, I don't go to a restaurant without picking my seat. So my seat is always with my back to the wall looking at the front door. It took maybe 5 years to finally get my wife conditioned that I sit down first, and it's not because I'm disrespectful, it's because that's just the way it is in my world, okay? When I go to a 7-Eleven, whether I'm on duty or off duty, and I go there now more with my kids because they want to get Slurpees, but my daughter finally asked me a while back, Dad, how come we don't park in front? Well, when I pull into a 7-Eleven, I don't just drive in and pull right up into the front of the 7-Eleven to walk in. I pull off to the side and we walk up and I look in before we go into the 7-Eleven because I don't want to walk into a robbery in progress. I don't want to walk into somebody being held hostage because we don't know that's happening yet. Those are the ways that I mentally train. And I hate to tell you this, but there is a point now where you're going to have to start to mentally train yourself. Okay, and that's how you develop a survival mindset. But it's got to be developed now. We've got to get people conditioned to start thinking this way. We have to remind you that these threats can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone. And I can prove it if you don't think I'm right. If you go to IHOP to eat, if you go to Carl's Jr. to get a burger, if you go shopping at the mall, I can show you where these incidents have happened in all of these places. Okay? It could be while you're parked in your car at an intersection waiting for the light to turn green. All hell could break loose before you know it. Okay? You must take direct responsibility for your own safety. Why do you think I tell you that? Look, in Todd Renwick's perfect world, I would have a cop in front of every building, surrounding the campus, and that little cop on your shoulder that would tap you and say, you're about to do something stupid. Don't do that. Okay, but we don't have that perfect world. You have to take this responsibility as your number one priority. The other thing that's key, and you're gonna hear me say this over and over, you need to know your offices and your office building. You got to get out and know all the different entrances and exits. You need to know the offices that lock, the offices that don't lock. All of that stuff is going to pay dividends to you in the event that there's a threat. Time and time again, what we've read in these reports and heard firsthand from witnesses and victims is they did not know their building. They didn't know that they could have got out a different way, that they could have locked themselves into a room. They just didn't know that. Give you an example, Virginia Tech, when Cho chained the two main doors up front, he didn't realize himself that downstairs, just down the stairs, there's another entrance out of the building. People, students that went to that building, walked in the same door every day and went right to their classroom. Many of them couldn't even tell you what their classroom number was. They just knew which room it was. And many of them panicked that day when they couldn't get out the two doors, and that was it. They thought they were done. They didn't realize if they went downstairs, they could have got out. And that's a key, that you need to know your buildings. The what-if questions, you need to ask yourself those mentally. That's how you can mentally prepare and mentally train. And when I say what if, okay, so what if we're sitting in here and we're talking and all of a sudden, bang, bang. Okay? What are you going to do? Okay, well, you're already thinking. She just, right out the door. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? Well, I don't know. I mean, is it just shutting the doors and locking them and getting into one side of the corner and being quiet and just hanging tight? Or is it going out the door? Okay, that's what I'm talking about, the mental preparation. And that's how you prepare yourself mentally and emotionally to react, folks. We have to react. We can't not react. Okay, we have to react in some way, somehow. And then again, mentally and physically practice your plan that you're going to come up with. What's your plan? I don't know what it's going to be. Okay, it may be if you're in one of these offices in this hallway, is your plan going to be that your door's always shut and locked? And if you're in your office, you have a sign that says in or out, so somebody just knocks? Or if you leave your door open while you work, is it going to remain locked, so all you have to do is lean over and shut it really quick? Okay? Those are the mental practices that we're talking about. Also, physically practicing it, how many of you come in to work here through the same door every day? Don't lie to me. Change it up. Okay? Use different doors. Okay? So you get accustomed to knowing that you can come in and go out those ways. Sometimes we're going to have to inconvenience ourselves, folks. It's the bottom line. But if it takes an extra minute to get to your office because you're going to go in the bottom and come up, then do that. But change it up. Okay? That's how you can physically and mentally get adapted to your building. We have buildings here, multi-level buildings where I'll go talk to a department and nobody knows what the floor below them looks like. Nobody knows what the floor above them looks like. They only know their area. Okay? So, how do we prepare a response plan? How do we get to the point where we need to get? One of the best ways to do this is a simple process, is to analyze a past incident. And I don't mean like a national incident that we're talking about or a local incident. Something that happened here where you had an issue with an employee and it was a threat. Maybe it was an employee that came in and became verbally abusive and really put the nerve in everybody about how they reacted. Does anything come to your mind when we talk about that? Okay. So you look at that and say, how did we handle that? And what could we have done better? Meaning, did one person get stuck dealing with that person and they felt helpless because nobody was around to help them? It would have been nice if you had a code word or a folder that you could hold up and that would trigger people to start doing what they're supposed to be doing. Just simple things like that. Assess potential for violence. And here's what I tell departments. What is your potential for violence at CASAT? Well, let me think here. Center for the Application of Substance Abuse Technologies. Is there a potential for issues? For threats? Okay. So we look at that aspect. You might want to look at your building dynamics. You're open. You're accessible. What do you think I mean by that?
Here's classrooms here.
You have classrooms here mixed in with offices.
People come in frequently and openly.
People come in frequently to...
Just come in and out of the building frequently and openly.
People come in and out of the building frequently. They may come in just to use the restroom. They may come in to cut through the building and go to a different place. They may come in just because they can. They can walk right in the front door and sit down in the hallway and hang out. Those are all the things that you need to look at about the potential for threat you have here. Okay? Now assess your preparedness. Right now, how prepared are you? So let's move on. Where we're going, though, is to get you there. I can assure you I've been very impressed with the willingness to look at this and move forward. We did walk your building. We took a lot of notes. I made a lot of suggestions, and these aren't suggestions to change a whole lot of things, but they're suggestions that can put some things in place that'll make it that much better. I think the willingness is there, and I think you'll see these changes after today, and you guys come together as a building, as a department, and maybe implement some of these. We're not talking about multi-$1,000 changes, although we could if you guys had the money. We could make this great, but that's just not reality, folks. But I think there are some little things that can be done that'll make it better. And that's because we've begun the process to assess your preparedness. So, an active threat. In general, how you respond to an active threat will be dictated by the specific circumstances of the encounter. People always say, well, what do I do? And I'll say, well, I can give you a bunch of recommendations, but unless I know exactly what's going to happen, I can't tell you what you need to do. Every situation is going to be different. I think it's pretty safe to know that if it's what we call an active shooter, we know what's happening. Somebody is in the building actively shooting. Okay, that's pretty clear. But what do we do if an individual showed up and just exploded at the front office in there because that's the first people he encountered? He's upset, he's mad, and he's made statements that you're going to regret this, I'm going to come back and blow this place up, y'all go to you-know-what, and storms out of here. What are you going to do? That's refreshing. That's refreshing. And the reason I say that is because we've had that happen on campus, and then we've gotten an email 2 weeks later. Oh, by the way, we thought we might want to let you know about this. Okay? So that's where we want to get to, and that's what we're looking at with active threat. Keep in mind there could be more than one threat happening at the same time or in the same situation. It could be multiple people. It could be more than one person. It could be different situations going on. I mean, you could be dealing with an irate student or somebody being verbally abusive, and now somebody has a medical emergency. Okay? You have to understand that Murphy's Law, sometimes this can happen. Here is the key to this whole thing. People used to say, tell me what I need to do. And I used to say, I could give you 20, 25 things that you could do, but realistically, how effective is that going to be for you? And what we're finding out is the two options that exist are the ones that are going to save your life. Evacuate or lock down. There is a caveat with evacuate. Okay? You indicated that if we heard bang bang, you're evacuating out that side door. Okay? That may be the best option rather than locking down because it's immediate, it's right there. However, in evacuation, you have to make sure that you're not evacuating into a problem. You're not evacuating into the threat. Okay, you're not now removing yourself from a place that you could be secure in to a place that you're in the middle of the threat. Okay? Locking down means just that. You lock down, you get on the phone to 911, and you stay put. You stay put until the police are knocking on your door or they're making entry on their own. And you see them physically. Okay? An example of this, and I'll be honest with you, probably the place that's doing this the best right now is the school district. Saw firsthand with my own two eyes at the Sparks Middle School shooting. We knew that the schools had these codes, and we knew that they taught their students and faculty to lock down. We knew that. I knew that from my own kids. I quiz my kids all the time and question my kids and about their drills and when they get a code yellow or a code red. I hear it on the radio every day, the police radio. And don't think that if I'm not hearing it around my kids' school, I'm not going that way. But what we did see firsthand in the Sparks Middle School shooting is, keep in mind on two things, two important things. That did not happen inside. everything happened outside the school. Okay? Over 50% of these types of shootings happen outside, not inside. Now, that's still a big percentage that happens inside. But again, over half of them happen outside. In this case, this happened outside. However, it happened before the actual school bell rang and all the kids would have been inside. But there were a good majority of kids inside the building that locked down. Our response was very rapid. We were there within minutes after everything transpired. When our officers entered that school, you had officers from the university, the school police department, Sparks Police Department, and Reno Police Department that made entry right away. They made entry into the building, made the initial tactical sweep to make sure there was no active violence going on inside the school building, and then they held their posts and began to go room to room. Well, a Reno police officer went to a room, looked in, saw all the kids in the back of the room, knocked on the door, said, "Open the door." The kids in the back of the room went, and he's like, "Open the door." And I distinctly remember this because the radio transmission was, "Hey, I've got a room full of kids here, but they won't open the door." Didn't think anything about it, okay? Afterwards, when we had our law enforcement debriefing, it came up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I do remember hearing that." Well, the key was those kids are taught under no circumstances, regardless of police or faculty or anybody, do you open that door. You stay there until somebody makes entry with a key and comes in. That's how they're conditioned. Okay, and it makes sense. So those are some of the things that we learn, that we take back, we talk about, and that we give to you folks to understand. Lock down, and then don't open the door. If we need to get in, we'll get in. Okay, to let you know, we're here, you're safe. Now we need you to evacuate with us. Okay? The same thing at the Renown shooting. Those of you that don't know or familiar with Renown, the 1500 East 2nd Street building, the 3rd floor, where the shooting happened at Nevada Urology, our University Medical School clinic is right across the hall. Okay? So, again, officers were on scene 46 seconds after the call came into dispatch. That's pretty quick, okay? Same thing, as they went through the building, they came across several offices where folks were locked in, locked themselves in, okay? Kept themselves there. Others, cops are going through the building with semi-automatic weapons, and people are just walking through, walking by them. None the wiser. No, I'm going home, I'm going to my car. Those types of things. Okay? So just understand that the key things here of what we're trying to tell you is locking down is a great option. Okay? You're still saving lives by locking down. Escaping is not a bad option. You just have to make sure when you escape, you're not putting yourself in a threat. Okay? One of the things that need to be part of your plan on your 3x5 card is how are you going to alert others that there's a problem? Because that is another key into saving lives. Now, you may be alerting others through a code word. What that code word is, I don't really care. But it's got to be a code word that you're all familiar with and is unique. It could be, just examples. It could be the last name that nobody has here. It could be Dr. Such and Such or Professor Fnute Snoot. It could be that it's not a code word, that it's a signal. Some departments on campus use a completely different color file folder, whether it's green or purple or red, and cashier's office has a great system. They got each person up at the cashier's office has a green folder. And if they have a problem with an individual, they hold up the green folder. or they turn and say, hey, can you take this green folder to the back? Which triggers everybody to start what they're supposed to be starting. It works very effective. So that is up to you as a department to kind of figure out how you want to do it through code word or through signal. But one of the key things is to alert others, because it's helpful to have somebody else doing things in the background while you're dealing with the potential threat. Okay? And it might be just an irate student that's making you comfortable. And again, this is stuff that we don't really necessarily need to tolerate or put up with. It's not acceptable for a student to come in and verbally abuse you or be disruptive over things. If the threat is still present or ongoing, whether it be a threat, a fire, or other, call 911. Or attempt to get to a safer place and call. This is where the buddy system is helpful. If you've got the threat going on, you say the code word, you're not picking up the phone in front of this person and calling the police. Somebody else is already doing it in the background. Okay? And that is beneficial because our biggest savior is having somebody on the landline with our dispatch, because we're able to continue to get updated information as we respond. That information to us is crucial. Okay? Whether we get it or we don't, we're still coming, but it's nice for us to get as much information as we can as we're responding in. I put this up there. Now you heard me say we were at Renown 46 seconds after the call came in. That's pretty quick. Okay? There was a great response from patrol officers that were working. Let me also tell you this. There were law enforcement officers, and I've been in law enforcement for 21 years. I saw a lot of people that I hadn't seen in years, guys that I went to the academy with, that responded there. The response is rapid and it's regional. It's not just the specific agency that needs to be there. We've made a commitment from law enforcement in our area that regardless of whose jurisdiction it's in, if one of these calls come out, we're all going. Okay? So you can only imagine the amount of law enforcement personnel that shows up to these types of issues. As they respond, you have to realize that it may not be as quick as you want it to be or you think it is. 30 seconds in a situation when you're faced with something like this is 5 minutes. Feels like 20 minutes. Okay? And that's why we include this information in this slide is they're coming. It may seem to you that it's taking forever. And I've been there. I've been out on the street where I've been in contact with an individual that now decides he wants to fight, and I'm fighting for my life. I've called out for help, and it seems like it takes my partners forever to get there. And when you go back and look at it and you find out, well, they were there in 25 seconds. To me, it felt like 25 minutes. Okay? Learn your evacuation options ahead of time. Know your building. I can't tell you that over and over and enough that you need to get out and do what I call take a field trip. If you haven't walked through every nook and cranny of this building and walked through different exits and done all that, you need to do it. Okay, you need to familiarize yourself with this building. And if you're not in this building and you're in a different building, you need to do the same thing there. Okay? Lockdown means preventing entry and concealing yourself. We've discovered that there are areas in these buildings that locking down in a room might not be an option. We looked at your big fishbowl out here. Okay? There is a back room in there that can be locked down. Okay? And that's where you need to react, is if that's where you're at. But it may be you have to conceal yourself somewhere else. It might be under a desk, it might be under a table, it might be under something, but you got to get there. You heard me talk about unsecured areas, and you heard me tell you that over half of these happen outside, not necessarily inside. Okay, I can give you some recommendations, but the key thing here is your reaction. Okay, again, we're back to how you're going to react. You have to make sure that if you find yourself in an open area, you immediately seek protection. What is that protection? Well, I don't know, but if we walked out of this building in this parking lot, I know there's a whole bunch of cars out there. If it's getting in between two cars, then that's what you do. You get in between two cars. If you have to get under a car, you get under a car. The university has planter boxes all around. You might have to take your little behind and jump into a planter box. That's what I would do. Okay? If I walked out and all of a sudden somebody's shooting, I'm jumping in a planter box. Okay? It might even be you might be walking down the street and you've got a sidewalk that has a curb about that big. It might be laying down in that gutter and just using that little ledge of the curb to conceal yourself the best way you can. That's better than standing right up as a target, right? Okay? Might be a tree, it might be a pole, but you have to find something and seek protection. Then you start thinking to yourself, is escape my best option? Well, again, can you see the threat, the violence? If you can, and you know you need to go the opposite way, that's the way you want to go. If you can't see it, and our campus is confusing sometimes, where you may hear something and you think it's coming from over there, but the way the buildings are echoing and surfacing, it's actually over there. So you need to be careful about your considerations of escape. We did some tests, even with ourselves, in Getchell. When we had the opportunity to use Getchell with training, we actually had guys go in the building with live ammo, but blanks, and start firing. And we sent officers in to aggressively go find it. Well, they could hear it, and they were moving towards it, but the way that the sounds were muffled or echoing, it wasn't as easy as they thought it was going to be. Okay? So just know that if you can't see it, you can hear it. If you're not for sure, you got to be careful about which way you escape or which way you go. Okay? If in doubt, find that safe, secure area and wait. Conceal yourself and wait. Okay? Again, though, folks, you've got to react. That's the key. React. Do something. Okay? The other thing that we learned and found very beneficial that we hadn't really done, and that was talk to our people about what it is you're going to see from our response and what our response is. Several years ago, we used to think, oh, we're not giving up our tactics. Why would we tell the community what our tactics are? Because then if somebody in that group wanted to go and commit an act of violence, they would know what our tactics are. And we continued doing what our training was, but really when we broke it down, here's our tactics, folks. Call comes in, there's an active threat or an active shooting. I can tell you this, we're responding extremely fast. We are going to make entry or locate, isolate, and immediately stop the threat. What's so secret about that? Okay? So that's where we said, we're really not giving up our detailed tactics. We're just saying, we're coming. We're going to find the threat, and we're going to stop it. Okay? So we thought, well, let's include this stuff in here because it's very beneficial to people when we respond, what they're going to see. Again, we're going to immediately respond. Our goal, locate, isolate, and eliminate the threat. Stop it. Okay? Bottom line. You may be treated like a suspect. Okay? Sorry, but we have a lot of information to filter during these responses because we just don't know who's who. Okay? So there is a filtering process from our end. And from you, it may feel like you're being treated like a suspect. Weapons could be aimed at you. I went over to Renown about a week after that incident to meet with the staff, check on them, see how everybody's doing. And it opened up some dialogue, and one of the questions I got was, when we locked down, we had officers come up through the back side of the building and enter with fully automatic weapons, and they were pointing them at us. And we were like, yeah, sorry, but that's going to happen. And they just said, we weren't prepared for that. And we saw officers that were in uniform. We saw officers that had beards and hats on backwards and in shorts, but these big flak jackets that said police on them. Well, yeah, because you're getting response from everybody in the region that's coming here that are going to do that. And these are the things that caught them by surprise because they weren't expecting that type of stuff. You may be searched and handcuffed, okay? We have, like I said, we have a process we have to go through to filter through to determine, do we have our person that is the suspect? Who are our witnesses? Who are the people that can provide us information? Who doesn't have any information for us? It's like a triage. It's like us doing a triage to determine where you're going to go. If you're a witness, you're going to go to a different place, okay? If obviously you're injured, you're going to go to a different place. So we still have a process to go through as well. You may be asked to keep your hands in the air or on your head, and you may be escorted out of the building by law enforcement. Gosh, we probably escorted close to 100 people out of Renown that were literally being escorted by armed law enforcement officers to their locations they needed to go. Okay, we had city fair buses staged and waiting that we took a large group, put them on a bus, took them to the police department to begin the interview process. We had others that went to a room so we could triage them out, whether they were going to go home, whether they needed to go to some sort of medical attention. So all of that stuff is going on. Things we like to not see, running towards the police. This is so common and understandable. Okay? You see your saviors, and the trauma you're mentally going through, you may have a tendency to just run and either hug or run towards because you know that that's your help. It's helpful if you don't do that. I can tell you this, because it happens every time, we condition our officers to have to deal with that. During our trainings, we'll dispatch them to a scenario, and the scenario may be they're going down a hallway and then they'll hear a loud bang, and the next thing, 35 people are going to come running down that hallway towards them. And we want to mentally condition our officers to be able to filter all that and deal with it. However, if we can also get you to condition not to do that, it's beneficial. It's easy to say, okay? It's hard to do, and we get that. Try not to point at them, make quick movements, screaming, yelling, demanding. We do get a lot of that, okay? The screaming, yelling, demanding, and it's hard for us to interpret all that. Or have anything in your hands. And if you have your cell phone in your hand or water bottles, just keep them up so we can see them. What we do like to see is the raising of the arms, spreading fingers, showing hands, maybe even going down to the floor. Keep your hands visible, spread your arms and legs, but just more importantly, just listen to what they're telling you to do, okay? A lot of times we're trying to communicate to these people and it's pure chaos. Nobody's listening. They're not listening. We may be telling them, stay there, stay there, stay there, and they're all coming. I mean, they're just coming. Okay? So just try to listen to what they're telling you to do. I joke about this because we've had issues where we've had to deal with an aggressive individual. Okay? So imagine this. You got a guy that is upset, maybe on drugs, and he's not complying with anything the police are saying. So you got 5 hungry police officers trying to deal with this one angry individual. Do you think that these police officers are going to say, okay, you're the point of contact, you communicate all the commands to him? No. Every police officer is barking a different command. Get down on your knees. Roll over on your back. Get down on the floor. Don't move, don't move. And he's trying to process all this. Okay, what do they want me to do? Okay, it's the same concept. We get it. One of the things that is crucial to us, and I'm going to go back to the key indicators, okay? You know what I'm talking about when I say you get a potential client, a potential student. It might even be a non-student that just shows up in your building, and you get that feeling that this is not right. Okay, this concerns me. What we need is immediate reporting. Okay, they may not be causing an actual threat at that time. So maybe 911 is not the option. Maybe it's just our non-emergency dispatch, which is 334 cops, to let us know that you've got a potential problem, a suspicious person, something that doesn't look right, so we can get on it right away rather than later. It's hard for us to go back when we get information that's not timely. We miss a lot of things, okay? And I gave an example earlier, and that is a true story. I'm not making it up when I say we got an email from a department that said, we had this guy in here, he did A, B, C, and D. He's a big concern of ours. We have people who feel threatened, all of this stuff, and then they say it happened 2 weeks ago. And I read the email like 3 times, and I'm like, no way. It's got to be a typo. So I called him on the phone. Oh, yeah, it happened 2 weeks ago. We just were talking about it at a staff meeting, and somebody said, well, you ought to email the police. One of those days in my career where I have to bite my tongue. Okay? Please let us know right away. If it's not us, tell a supervisor, tell somebody. Okay? We always say, you see something, say something. If you're coming to work and you change up your routine and you don't come in the main doors and you walk away and go through the bottom doors, but you happen to see a dude camped out down here in your bushes, let us know. Don't just say, ooh, that's kind of creepy, and come in the building and get to work. Okay, let us know so we can get on it. That's what we're here for. We don't sleep 24/7 for us. Okay? Somebody is always working. Police officers are always working. So just let us know so we can get on tune. If you get a student that comes in, blows a gasket, and leaves, let us know so we can do some background on it and find out, who is this person? What's their problem? Are they somebody that's already known to us, or is this somebody now we need to get to know? Okay? So these are going to be some great resources for you. This first link, do I have a laser pointer here? There it is. This first link right here, DHS Gov Active Shooter, if you go to that website, there's all kinds of links, and it's not top secret, folks. There's all kinds of information and brochures up there and sample cards or 8x10 little posters that have information that'll help you create your little plan. It's good to see. It's good for you to peruse it too, because a lot of what I'm talking about is outlined on that website. Some of the things you can print and post on your wall by your desk out of public view, just so you can mentally look at it and train and remember the things that it's telling you to do. This training at FEMA.gov has some training courses you can do. And the nice thing about this is you can do them on your own. Okay, this is your initiative, okay, to learn and help save your life. In addition to what we're doing today, there's just resources there. I suggest you take a look at them. How many of you are more visual? I mean, I'm up here talking for an hour now and giving you these information, and recommendations that you could do, but how many of you visually need to see stuff? Okay? This is a great YouTube video to tie in what I'm talking about. It's less than 10 minutes. Okay? You could watch it, and it summarizes a scenario and how people reacted. It's locally done too. Okay? Now again, remember the YouTube video is going to probably show an active shooter situation. It may show a guy, I don't want to give up all the movie, but it may show a guy that's displaying a gun, pointing a gun at somebody. Okay? But it shows what we're asking and recommending people do and how to react. I can't express enough that the bottom line is you have to mentally condition yourself to react. Because the quicker you react, the more lives and your life is going to be saved. Okay? A simple closing the door and locking the door down. Might even be getting up and running into your counterpart's office and locking down with them. It might be grabbing somebody in the hallway that is not part of it, but could be part of it, and pulling them in your office and locking it down. Those are reactions that we're looking for. Okay? Just quick reactions. And what I can also do is I can email this so the links get me emailed out to everybody. Okay? So, what kind of questions do you have for me?
How do you advise in a situation where maybe there's an active shooter across campus, so not really in the immediate vicinity of this building? How do you advise?
So if there was an active shooter on or around campus, but close enough, we're going to send out one of our emergency text messages. How many of you are registered on our emergency text alerts? Good. If you're not, you need to do it. And here's why. We don't spam, folks. You're not going to get 50 million text messages from us advertising Viagra or any of that stuff, okay? You get a text message from us, it's going to have a meaning to it. The only time we send a non-emergency text message out, outside of a campus closure for weather, and I'll talk about that, would be our test, our quarterly test that we're required to do. We do send out, we struggled over this because weather or campus closure for weather, to us, we didn't kind of put in that emergency category, but we started thinking about it and said, look, if we can prevent you from getting in your car and driving to campus if you don't have to, that's what we want to accomplish. We've gotten some backlash when we've sent out like a 6 a.m. text message that campus was closed. Believe it or not, people have responded back to us very nasty. My theory is okay, delete it. Just delete it. If you don't want it, delete it. But if you haven't registered, go on to unr.edu/alerts. It's a less than 5-minute process to register on this system. You'll get a follow-up email. You got to click the link to complete the process. You can register up to 3 phone numbers, so if you want to put your husband, mom, dad, whoever on it, you can add them to it. So anytime you get a text message, they're getting the same text message.
That's a great idea.
And then it also follows up with an email of that same text message. Okay? So, in your question, if we had a situation where it might have not have been here, but let's just say it's up north of campus or it's on, it's at a dorm. We are going to send that alert out. My preference would be that you as a building lock down regardless. And when I say lock down, you go and people physically go and lock this building down, and you maybe put somebody up towards the front, so if you have somebody that shows up that clearly is either a student or a worker, you can let them in. Okay? But that would be my preference. Until you get the all clear from us, you just lock down. Does that answer it? Any other questions?
You guys put up audio systems too, right?
Yep. So we have last year, or the beginning of fall semester, we implemented a $140,000 emergency alert system. Okay. They are, in essence, the old school air raid siren speakers. Modern, digital, but the same concept if you're familiar with that. What that also allows us to do is we can do it remotely from our phones, or we can do it from the station, where we can hit the alert button. You'll hear the air raid siren go off, followed by a message. Again, we're trying to put multiple layers in place to notify our campus of an ongoing threat to them that gets them to react.
Thank
So.
you.